What if, at the most difficult moment in your life, the only person willing to help you was a complete stranger? Have you ever stopped to think about that? We often believe that the people around us are the ones we can completely trust, but life has the power to surprise us with unexpected encounters capable of completely transforming the course of a story. Imagine yourself in a situation where all seems lost, where loneliness is so intense that you feel like no one cares. It's at that moment that someone you've never seen before appears, someone who doesn't speak your language, who doesn't share your culture, but who, for some mysterious reason, decides to lend a hand. This is one of those stories that makes us reflect on the power of destiny and how the most unlikely gestures can have the greatest impact. Have you ever experienced this? Have you ever felt like a complete stranger suddenly appeared at just the right moment, almost like an angel in disguise? If not, perhaps this narrative will awaken in you the realization that the encounters that most impact life don't happen in predictable places. They happen by chance, in the unlikely, in the improbable that changes everything. The young woman in this story lived a difficult routine, marked by a feeling of abandonment. She believed no one truly cared, that she was invisible to the world. The days passed the same, and loneliness seemed to be her only companion. Who hasn't felt this way, even if only for a moment? That gnawing doubt of whether there's truly anyone willing to notice our pain. Stay with me until the end, because what you'll discover now may surprise you. The thing is, life in an almost magical way insists on proving that there are still people who care, and often these people come from where we least expect it. A stranger, someone with no ties, no obligation, no apparent reason to help, and that's precisely when the unexpected becomes powerful, when salvation arrives from where you never imagined. Consider for a moment the power of this situation. A young woman in distress, surrounded by indifferent gazes, believing no one cared. But amidst so many faces, there was a single, different look. A look from someone who wasn't part of the ordinary scene of her life, but who saw what no one else wanted to see. Isn't it curious how, sometimes, help comes from those least expected? This introduction isn't just about a story of survival, but about the hope reborn when someone unknown decides to act. It's about how simple gestures can become decisive, and how these unexpected encounters reveal a universal truth. We're not as alone as we think. Have you ever wondered how many times you've passed someone on the street who could have changed your life with a single gesture? When we delve into these true stories, we realize how much humanity still holds within itself the capacity to surprise. You don't need to be a famous hero. You don't need to have superpowers. Sometimes all it takes is the courage to stop, to notice, to care. This is what transforms strangers into protagonists of the most moving life stories. And this is what you'll feel as we progress through this story. The certainty that, behind every anonymous face, there may be a chance for change. Now imagine the emotional weight of that moment. A young woman who had already given up on trusting people, who carried within her the feeling of being invisible, finds in a stranger's gesture proof that the world can still be a place of hope. It's as if, amidst the darkness, a small flame has been lit. And isn't that exactly what we all seek at some point? The spark that reminds us that it's still worth believing. So, as you follow this story, allow yourself to reflect on your own life. Have you ever been in this young woman's shoes, feeling like no one cared about what you were going through? Or perhaps you were the stranger who reached out to someone in need. Either way, these experiences connect us on a deep level, because they show that, even in our differences, there is something that unites us, the ability to care. And the most fascinating thing is that these encounters don't need warning. They simply happen, at the right time, in the right place, when all seemed lost. It's the improbable turned into reality, and perhaps that's exactly what makes these stories so powerful. The unpredictability that stirs our emotions and makes us believe once again in humanity. Stay with me until the end, because what follows will show how an entire life can change in a matter of seconds when an unexpected act of kindness crosses the line into indifference. This young woman's journey is just beginning. And perhaps that's why stories like this touch us so much, because deep down, we all know how important it is to feel that someone cares. It doesn't matter if that someone is a friend, a family member, or even a stranger who crosses our path at the most unlikely moment. These small tokens of humanity have the power to remind us that we are not alone, even when everything seems to indicate otherwise. And here I want to open a special space for you. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below with what's touched you most so far. or even share a similar experience you've had. Believe me, when you write, it's not just a comment lost among so many others. It's your voice helping to build a community, your story connecting with others who may need to hear exactly what you have to say. Plus, when you like the video, you're showing that this type of content matters and needs to continue. It seems simple, but each like is like a little push that makes this message reach more people. And if you subscribe to the channel, you're saying, I want to continue being part of this journey. I want to follow other stories that can move, inspire, and even change the way we see life. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this kind of content. It's what keeps alive the idea that we can spread messages of hope, empathy, and humanity in a world that so often insists on distracting us from what truly matters. And while you think about it, stay with me, because the most intense part of this story is yet to come, and what happens next may stir your emotions even more. She was young, but she already carried within her a weight that seemed far greater than her age could bear. It wasn't just everyday problems, but a constant feeling of invisibility, as if her existence went unnoticed by the world. Friends had drifted away, family members were too busy with their own struggles, and the small signs of attention that might have warmed her heart simply didn't arrive. It was as if her life were happening behind the scenes, without an audience, without applause, without even a curious glance. This loneliness wasn't just external, but also internal, a kind of silent echo that accompanied her everywhere. As she walked through the crowded streets, she felt alone. As she looked inside her house, the emptiness seemed even greater. It's strange to think that we can be surrounded by people and yet feel completely abandoned. But that was exactly what she experienced. The impact on her mentality was devastating. Little by little, she began to believe the hidden truth that no one truly cared about her, that her pain was hers alone, and that there was no safe place to rest her heart. At school, at work, or even in casual encounters, everything seemed superficial. Quick smiles, automatic questions, cold answers. That wasn't connection, it was just social routine, and she felt increasingly like her role was being erased, as if she were just a background character in someone else's life. It was hard to hold on to hope, hard to believe that there could still be a change in her story, and deep down, maybe she had already given up on hoping. The days were all the same, and the repetition only reinforced her belief in abandonment. She would wake up feeling exhausted before even getting out of bed. The sun shone through the window, but it didn't seem to illuminate anything inside her. She would look at her own reflection and barely recognize herself, not because of her appearance, but because she could no longer see anyone there who had value or importance. The choices she made were always based on survival, never on joy. Eating, sleeping, studying, working, everything was on autopilot. It was as if her life had become a straight line, colorless, without curves, without surprises. And it's precisely in this kind of scenario that the greatest revelations often occur. It's when you no longer expect anything that something or someone appears to show that life still holds hidden cards. But before that, it's necessary to understand the depth of what she felt. The feeling of abandonment wasn't just a phase, but a belief that shaped every decision, every thought. This led her to distance herself even further from others, creating a silent and cruel cycle. The more she believed no one cared, the more she withdrew, and the more she withdrew, the less people were able to get close. It was a lonely journey, marked by sleepless nights and days without motivation, a heavy silence that came not from outside, but from within, a silence that seemed to scream at every moment, "You don't matter." This kind of pain leaves no visible marks, but corrodes from within, like a slowly consuming flame. There were no visible wounds, but an abyss grew wider with each passing day. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this story isn't just about a young woman isolated from the world. It's about how we all at some point deal with the feeling of being ignored. It's about how our mindset can be shaped by experiences, and how a lack of connection can become an unbearable burden. And the curious thing is that when we believe nothing will change, when we no longer have the energy to wait for a change, that's exactly when life usually surprises us. What makes this narrative so powerful is the reminder that no one is completely immune to loneliness. Even those who appear strong and smiling may be fighting invisible battles. And as unlikely as it may seem, sometimes the answer comes not from those we know, but from those we never imagined. It's as if fate, or life, has a way of showing us that the improbable can become real, that unplanned decisions can change everything. This young woman didn't know it yet, but her story was about to enter a new phase. A phase in which the impact of a simple gesture could open a new window of hope. Until that moment, she had only been certain she was alone, but she was much closer to transformation than she could have imagined. Comment below. This makes sense to me. If you've ever felt like the world didn't see you, perhaps you've also felt like no one cares. It's a strange, almost suffocating sensation, as if the whole world were moving on while you remained still, invisible, trapped in a space where your presence made no difference. That was her reality. Time seemed to weigh heavier each day, and it wasn't because her responsibilities increased, but because the loneliness became increasingly difficult to bear. Her heart beat silently, but no one seemed to hear. The smile she sometimes wore was just a mask, a disguise to hide the storm raging inside her. And who hasn't found themselves in this place? The place where you look around and find no one truly willing to hear your hidden truths, the ones you keep secret so as not to be judged or rejected. It's at this stage of the journey that many give up asking for help, because their mind creates the illusion that no one cares. It's painful to admit, but it happens more often than we imagine. There are thousands of people who wake up every day with this same anguish, and yet they keep walking, even if only out of inertia. The young woman in our story carried this burden with a quiet strength. It was the kind of strength born not from conscious choices, but from the need to survive. Every step she took was the result of small but weighty decisions, whether to get out of bed or not, whether to face another day or give up. This daily struggle created profound wear and tear, because there was no reward, no one to notice the effort she made. It's hard when you give your all and, in the end, feel like you're still invisible. These feelings of sadness and abandonment leave scars that aren't always visible, but which affect every thought and every action. She began to believe she wasn't worthy of love, that she wasn't valuable enough to be cared for. This belief shaped her mindset, closed doors, and distanced her even further from others. It's as if there were a filter in front of her eyes, distorting reality and showing only what confirmed her loneliness. And the truth is, this isn't unique to her. We often feed these internal narratives ourselves, creating a cycle that traps us even deeper in despair. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this kind of pain reveals something essential about the human condition. We all need connection, to feel part of something greater than ourselves. When this need isn't met, the impact is devastating. It's not just fleeting sadness, but a feeling of emptiness that can rob us of hope and make us question the point of continuing. This is one of the hardest revelations we can face, realizing that without connection, life loses color, loses movement, and even loses the ability to move us. Her journey is a reflection of this absence. Walking through busy streets without feeling noticed was like carrying a secret too heavy to keep alone. People passed her in a hurry, immersed in their own worries, unaware that behind that weary gaze lay a silent plea for help. This is where the contradiction lies. On the outside, she seemed just another young woman like so many others, but inside she was living a constant storm. And perhaps this is the point that connects us most to this story, the reminder that we all carry invisible battles which rarely appear on the surfaces we show to the world. The most intriguing thing is that this kind of experience, however painful, also opens the door to transformation. It's in the abyss of loneliness that the most impactful encounters often arise, because they arrive unannounced, unplanned, as if they were an unexpected response from life. When we're vulnerable, any gesture of attention has a profound impact. A look, a word, an act of kindness is enough to break down a seemingly insurmountable barrier. This hidden truth shows us that we are not as alone as we believe. Sometimes the difference lies not in the lack of people, but in the way our mindset has been shaped by wounds. When we believe no one cares, we fail to see the signs that, yes, there are people willing to reach out. It's as if our hearts are blinded, trapped in a maze of insecurities. But even in this maze, there's always the possibility of crossing paths with someone capable of showing us a different path. And that was exactly what was about to happen to her. In the midst of all that heavy routine, something unexpected would begin to change the course of her life. A simple gesture, coming from where she least expected it, had the power to break the cycle of loneliness. It's curious to think how the biggest changes can arise from small, almost imperceptible details, yet which carry within them a transformative power. Write down, I'm on this journey too. If you've ever experienced or witnessed moments where the feeling of invisibility seemed greater than anything else. That day, her routine continued as usual. hurried steps through the busy streets, her gaze fixed on the ground, headphones trying to drown out the noise of the outside world, and, at the same time, the deafening emptiness she carried within. It was just another grey morning among many others, but behind the ordinary appearance something different was about to happen. The kind of event that doesn't warn, that doesn't give clear signs, but arrives suddenly, like a punch that knocks the wind out of her and changes the direction of an entire life. She walked distractedly, lost in heavy thoughts, almost disconnected from her surroundings. The traffic light flashed red, but her teary eyes didn't notice. Her body moved forward out of inertia, crossing without noticing the risk. The car approaching right around the bend wouldn't have time to brake. It was a matter of seconds, an instant that could have been just another step on the street, but which became a breaking point between before and after. Her heart raced as she noticed the metallic glint approaching, too fast, too inevitable. This was the moment of crisis, the height of vulnerability. Her mind went into shock. In milliseconds, a whirlwind of thoughts raced through her consciousness. The thought that her life could end there, the realization that no one would notice her absence, the feeling that all the silence she'd been carrying would finally have a tragic outcome. It was as if time had slowed down, revealing every detail with painful clarity, the screech of the brakes, the cold morning air, her heart pounding wildly in her chest, and the most distressing thing was that there was nowhere to run. Her body felt trapped, paralyzed by fear, unable to react. The steps that could save her were blocked by her shocked mind. It was at this point that we understood the full extent of the danger, when even the simplest decision, to move, became impossible. Her life was literally on the verge of being cut short, and there was no familiar face around to lend a hand. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this moment of crisis isn't just about physical risk. It carries hidden revelations about how we deal with our limits, our choices, and above all, our fragility. In extreme situations, we realize how small we are in the face of life's unpredictability. Everything that seemed so solid, plans, certainties, everyday fears, loses importance in the face of a single second that can decide between life and death. This young woman, who already felt invisible, was about to discover that even in the darkest abyss, the unexpected can emerge to change history. The street around her continued its rhythm, but for her the world seemed to have stopped. Her mind screamed, her body unresponsive. She felt as if no one cared, and in that moment, that belief seemed cruelly confirmed. The imminent impact was inevitable, and all that remained was the desperate silence of those who no longer had the strength to fight. But fate, in its mysterious way, still held a twist in store behind the scenes. It's curious how sometimes the lowest point of a journey is also the gateway to transformation. What seemed like the end can become the beginning of something completely unexpected. That's the power of life. To create plots none of us would be able to write. And hers was about to be interrupted or perhaps finally reinvented. The intensity of this moment lies not only in the physical danger, but in the emotional impact it carries. Because when someone who already believed they were worthless faces death, the feeling of abandonment is amplified to an almost unbearable degree. It's as if life were confirming her worst beliefs, as if to say, "You were right to think no one cared." This was the truth that echoed within her, the hidden truth that had weighed on her shoulders for so long. But the most striking thing is that life rarely follows the script we imagine. And in that second when all seemed lost, something would happen. An unexpected decision, an unlikely gesture, an act of courage that came not from someone she knew, but from someone she had never seen before. It is in that moment that stories gain new life, that the narrative changes tone, that the line between tragedy and hope becomes blurred. Comment below. This makes sense to me if you've ever experienced or witnessed a moment where everything seemed to fall apart in seconds, but somehow something unexpected happened. And it was precisely at the moment when everything seemed inevitable that something completely improbable happened. A quick, almost imperceptible movement amidst the chaos of the street changed the course of the scene. Someone appeared suddenly, as if from nowhere, and forcefully pulled her out of the path of the oncoming car. Her body, paralyzed by fear, was wrenched from immobility and thrown back to life in a matter of seconds. The screech of brakes still echoed in the air, but now there was a new presence at her side, firm and unexpected. It was a man, visibly foreign, someone who had nothing to do with the young woman's background, someone who didn't even speak her language. His appearance was completely different from what she was used to seeing every day. Clothes that betrayed he wasn't from there, a thick accent, words that came out in a rush and almost incomprehensible. And yet, in that moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was the gesture, the decision to act when no one else did. The surprise was so great that it took her a few seconds to understand what had happened. Her heart was pounding. Her breathing was labored and her hands trembled as if still gripped by danger. But when she looked up and met the man's gaze, her first feeling wasn't of strangeness, but of gratitude. He was there, a complete stranger, someone who could easily have continued on his way without a care, but who chose to stop, and that choice made all the difference. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what's striking isn't just the act of saving someone, but the mindset that leads someone to make such a decision. Think about it. How many times have we walked past someone in distress and pretended not to see? How many times have haste, fear, or even simple selfishness prevented us from acting? What makes this moment so powerful is that the hidden truth about the value of empathy appears precisely when we least expect it. This man didn't know the young woman. He had nothing to gain from it, but his decision had an impact that redefined her entire journey. This scene carries within it an important revelation. Sometimes, life shows us that help doesn't come from where we imagine. It doesn't come from family, it doesn't come from friends, it doesn't come from those who are always nearby. It can come from those we have no connection with, but who, in an instant, connect so intensely that it changes everything. It's the improbable revealing its strength. It's life's behind-the-scenes experience, showing that there are connections that defy logic. She, who until that moment had believed herself invisible, was seen, not just noticed, but rescued from real danger. And this deeply stirred her emotions. The feeling of abandonment that had haunted her for so long began to crack with the evidence that someone, albeit a stranger, had cared enough to intervene. There was no time for questioning, only the clear realization that her worth had been recognized in that stranger's gesture. And perhaps this is precisely the most transformative point of the story, realizing that often a change in mindset begins when someone from the outside shows us a version of ourselves we could no longer see. She believed she was unimportant, but in that moment, she realized her life had meaning. After all, if it didn't, why would anyone risk their own safety to save her? This encounter was unplanned, unrehearsed. It was pure chance, or perhaps fate. But the impact was immediate and profound. It was as if a bolt of lightning had cut through the darkness and illuminated a new possibility of existence. The simple gesture of pulling her out of the street became a powerful message. You matter. And the strangest thing is that she never would have imagined this message would come from a foreigner. The shock, the surprise, the initial strangeness soon gave way to a sense of genuine connection. Here were two people who didn't know each other, who didn't share the same language, but who somehow were connected by something greater than any cultural difference. That's the beauty of unlikely encounters. They reveal truths that had remained hidden until then. From that moment on, the young woman would never be the same. That experience would leave its mark not only on her still trembling body, but also on her soul, which was beginning to awaken from a long torpor. The impact of that gesture was impossible to ignore. She had just experienced a scene that seemed straight out of a movie, but which, for her, was real life. Write down, "I'm on this journey too," if you believe that the most unexpected encounters can reveal the greatest transformations. He didn't hesitate. While everyone else stood still, perhaps frightened or simply indifferent, that unknown man was the only one who acted. In a matter of seconds, his firm arm pulled the young woman back, away from the danger that was rapidly approaching. Her body, still paralyzed by fear, fell against his, and for an instant the feeling of safety returned. The screeching of tires still echoed through the street, accompanied by angry horns, but none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was that she was alive, because someone who had no obligation to do so chose to care. It was a quick gesture, but it had an immense impact. She was breathing raggedly, trying to catch her breath, and her teary eyes fixed on that foreign-looking man. There was no time for words, especially since they might not even share the same language. But there was something that transcended any linguistic barrier, the absolute clarity that without that act, her story could have ended there. It's curious to realize how, in moments of crisis, the most powerful language lies not in words but in gestures. And that gesture said more than any sentence could convey. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the contrast of this moment reveals a hidden truth that moves us all. That young woman spent so long believing that no one cared, that she was invisible to the world, and yet a stranger, Someone who had never crossed her path before proved her wrong. He wasn't a close friend. He wasn't a relative. He had no ties that compelled him to act. Yet he was the only one to break the line of indifference and choose to intervene. This is the kind of revelation that can completely transform someone's mindset. Discovering that often empathy comes from where you least expect it. She was still in shock. Her heart was pounding, and her legs could barely support her. But something new was happening inside her, almost imperceptible at first, like a timid flame that begins to ignite after a long time. For the first time in a long time, she felt she wasn't alone. That simple but decisive act showed her that her life was valuable enough for someone to risk it for her. And that realization was more powerful than any pep talk she could have heard before. The most surprising thing was thinking about the people who were part of her daily life. Friends who claimed to care, family members who assured her they were there but who, behind the scenes of her life, never truly saw her. And now, faced with real danger, it was a complete stranger who gave her the most concrete proof of care. This contradiction affected her on a deep, almost painful level because it exposed a brutal difference between words and actions. Those who were always nearby did nothing, but someone from the outside, someone with no connection whatsoever, was the one who saved her. This is the kind of experience that leaves a lasting impression. The impact isn't just on physical survival, but on the emotional transformation that follows. Because when you believe no one cares about you, and suddenly someone proves otherwise with such a courageous decision, something inside you inevitably shifts. It's as if the walls that held the belief in loneliness begin to crumble, revealing a new landscape. A landscape where there are still people willing to care, even when they have nothing to gain from it. And it's at this point that we realize the magnitude of our choices. That man could have stood still like everyone else. He could have thought, "It's not my problem," or he could have hesitated out of fear. But his decision to act was the turning point, not only for the young woman's survival, but for the way she would come to see herself and the world. Decisions like these don't appear in newspaper headlines, but they carry a quiet power capable of changing lives. This story shows how life's backstage is filled with unsung heroes, people we may never see again, but who leave an indelible mark on us. For the young woman, this act wasn't just a physical rescue. It was proof that she wasn't invisible. It was the revelation that, even in her journey of pain and silence, someone could see her. That's what makes this episode so transformative. As she tried to compose herself, she realized that that gesture had transcended much more than a moment of danger. It had broken through the internal barriers that kept her trapped in the belief of abandonment. It was as if life had chosen that exact moment to show her that her narrative could be different. And from that moment on, nothing would be the same. Comment below. This makes sense to me if you also believe that, often, the greatest gestures of care come from the most unexpected people. For a few moments, time seemed to stand still. The car had already moved on. The sounds of the street had returned to their normal rhythm, but inside her, everything was suspended. Her body trembled as if she had just ridden through a storm, and her breath came in shallow, pent-up gasps, trying to keep up with the flood of sensations swirling in her mind. The first impact was relief, an almost electric shock that coursed through her body, as if she could finally release the breath she hadn't even realized she was holding. But along with the relief came shock. The realization of how close she had been to the end hit her brutally, and hot tears began to flow uncontrollably. She didn't know how to react. Words couldn't express the gratitude that overflowed in her heart at that moment. The stranger still held her arm firmly, as if confirming that she was truly safe. It was in that touch that she found a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced in a long time. It was as if in a single gesture, someone had broken the barrier of invisibility that had haunted her for so long. No words of comfort were necessary. The silence shared between them said it all. She tried to open her mouth to thank him, but her voice wouldn't come. Her tears spoke louder, betraying the whirlwind of emotions overwhelming her. He, in turn, didn't seem to expect anything in return. His eyes conveyed calm, and there was a serenity in his expression that contrasted with the chaos she felt inside. It was a brief but intense encounter, the kind that leaves a deep mark without requiring much explanation. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what happened in that moment goes beyond a simple physical rescue. The true impact was happening within her, in her mindset, in the way she began to see herself and the world around her. For so long, she carried the conviction that no one cared, that her life didn't matter. But when she felt the hand of that stranger reassuring her, she realized that this hidden truth sustaining her pain wasn't as solid as it seemed. This emotional shock is a turning point, because when someone who owes you nothing shows you care, your internal narrative shifts. It's as if a new perspective opens up, revealing that perhaps there are people who, even without any connection, are capable of making choices that carry immense impact. And the gratitude that arises from this isn't just for having been saved from an accident, but for having been reminded that there's still humanity amidst indifference. The hug she gave that man was instinctive, a reflection of the avalanche of feelings that couldn't be contained within her. It was as if physical contact was the only way to convey what words couldn't. The weight of fear turned into tears, and each drop that fell was also a release, a cleansing of the beliefs that had suffocated her for so long. This moment of shared vulnerability showed that life can change tone in seconds, without a script, without warning. And this is one of the greatest insights we can learn. It doesn't take much to transform someone's journey. A gesture, a quick decision, a moment of courage can rebuild hopes that were in ruins. For her, this wasn't just a passing event, but a symbol. The reminder that in her darkest hour someone chose to see her. This symbol would remain alive within her, serving as a constant reminder that her life had value. The behind the scenes of this experience, what no one saw, was the true field of transformation. Her heart, previously accustomed to the weight of loneliness, now pulsed with a new energy. There was still pain, there were still scars, but there was also something different, the seed of trust. And when that seed is planted, even in arid soil, it finds a way to germinate. The shock hadn't yet worn off, and the scene would likely replay in her mind for a long time. But amidst all the confusion, a thread of hope was beginning to emerge. She understood she couldn't erase years of feelings of abandonment in a single day, but that moment was enough to shatter the narrative that no one would ever care. It was the first step in a silent but decisive change, and perhaps that's precisely what makes this kind of experience so powerful. It's not just the big stories that shape who we are, but the small events that carry within them a meaning disproportionate to their duration. For her, those seconds of danger and rescue would be remembered as a milestone, a turning point. Write down, "I'm on this journey too," if you've ever experienced or witnessed a moment in which relief and gratitude completely changed the way you saw life. While her heart was still adjusting to the accelerated rhythm the shock had provoked, a new realization began to dawn within her. The tight embrace, the shed tears, and the mere fact of being alive created an atmosphere charged with meaning. For the first time in a long time, she realized that perhaps she wasn't as alone as she'd imagined. That painful conviction of invisibility, which had followed her like a persistent shadow, began to fade in the face of clear evidence. Someone cared, not just in words, not just in superficial gestures, but in concrete, immediate and courageous action. The impact of this was difficult to put into words. Her mind, accustomed to endlessly repeating the narrative of abandonment, tried to resist. It was just a coincidence, she thought. Anyone would have done the same. But deep down, she knew it wasn't true. The dozens of gazes that witnessed the scene and remained inert were proof of it. The difference wasn't in coincidence, but in decision, and that detail changed everything. That stranger's unexpected gesture restored something she'd lost, her faith in humanity. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what was happening there wasn't just a physical rescue, but a process of inner transformation. That stranger's gesture acted like a mirror, revealing to the young woman a new perspective on herself and the world. For years she had harbored the belief that she didn't matter, that no one would ever notice her pain. This belief shaped her mindset, influenced her choices, and limited her relationships. But in a single instant, this entire structure began to crack. Not because someone promised something grand, but because a simple gesture at the right moment showed that there was still compassion in the world. This is the hidden truth we often forget. We don't need grand gestures to change someone's life. We need presence. And it was this unexpected presence that brought the young woman a powerful revelation. She wasn't invisible. Her existence had value, and that value had been recognized precisely by someone who didn't know her, who had no connection to her, but who still chose to see her. This gave birth to a new narrative within her, a counterpoint to the inner voices that always told her otherwise. The most fascinating thing is how moments like these leave lasting scars. She knew she would return home a different person. The noise of cars, the rush of the city, even the feeling of insecurity would still be there. but something essential had changed within her. The unexpected gesture didn't erase all the pain of the past, but it gave her a foothold, a concrete reminder that life could still surprise her positively. It was as if she had been given a new lens through which to see reality, a lens capable of showing that indifference is not the absolute rule. This reflection led her to consider how many times she herself might have been indifferent to another person's pain, how many faces she passed without noticing, how many silences she let pass without offering companionship, how many silent pleas for help might have gone unanswered. This awareness didn't bring guilt, but rather awakened a new desire. Perhaps, just as someone chose to care for her, she could also choose to care for others. This was the seed of a transformation that was only just beginning to germinate. And that's what makes stories like this so impactful. They don't just speak of the heroic actions of a stranger, but of the ripple effect these actions can generate. A life touched, a heart awakened, a renewed mindset. All of this begins unexpectedly, but continues to expand, creating new possibilities for connection. The young woman now carried within her not only the relief of having been saved, but the responsibility of keeping alive the flame of empathy that had been lit within her. The backstage of her emotional journey was still filled with insecurities, pain, and scars, but there was also a new ingredient: hope. And hope, however small, has immense power. It reconfigures thoughts, influences decisions, and opens space for new stories. The young woman knew she would still face challenges, knew that loneliness wouldn't disappear overnight, but what had happened was enough to change the direction of her steps. There was no going back to square one, because now she had experienced something that contradicted her deepest beliefs. This was the revelation that, more than any words, had a transformative impact. She mattered. Her life had meaning, and this certainty wasn't born from promises or speeches, but from the silent and powerful action of someone who, for a few seconds, decided to be present rather than indifferent. Comment below. This makes sense to me if you also believe that small gestures have the power to restore faith in humanity. Sometimes life surprises us with people who appear exactly when we need them most. It's almost as if there's an invisible alignment, a kind of silent orchestra that puts the pieces in the right place at the right time. For that young woman, the unexpected presence of a stranger represented much more than a simple rescue. It was the shattering of an internal narrative that had imprisoned her, the revelation that even amidst the chaos of loneliness, there are still people capable of seeing, of acting, of caring. This is a powerful reminder that human beings, at their core, still harbor within themselves a capacity for empathy that can change everything. And this truth isn't limited to a single story. In different parts of the world, similar stories are occurring, reinforcing this universal message. There was the case of a cyclist who saw a child about to fall into a river and didn't hesitate to jump in to save him, without even knowing the family, or the young man who, in the middle of a crowd at a subway station, noticed someone fainting near the tracks and managed to pull the person out seconds before a train arrived. These real-life episodes, which sometimes circulate only in flash news reports or local memories, have something in common: the profound impact of an unexpected gesture. And the most interesting thing is that they don't arise from planning, but from an instant, almost instinctive decision, which reveals the most authentic side of humanity. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because this realization leads us to question the role each of us plays in the lives of others, not just in grand moments of danger, but also in small everyday encounters. The mentality of indifference, so common in big cities and fast-paced routines, often makes us forget that every look, every word or gesture has the power to transform. And when someone breaks this pattern, when someone decides to truly be present, a space opens up for a new story to begin to be written. That young woman's journey wasn't just about surviving an accident, it was also about regaining faith in others, about opening herself to the possibility that we're not as alone as we believe. This change may seem simple, but it can profoundly alter the decisions we make from then on. Those who carry within themselves the certainty that they matter, that they can be seen, begin to walk with more courage, beginning to see opportunities where before they only saw barriers. The impact of such a gesture goes beyond the moment. It echoes, reverberates, and shapes mindsets. The behind-the-scenes details of this transformation are rarely told. We see the act itself, the rescue, the shocking news, but we don't witness the silent effects that linger afterward, in the nighttime thoughts, the shy smiles that reappear, the way a person begins to relate to themselves and the world. It's in these behind-the-scenes details that the true revelation occurs, realizing that life isn't a sequence of loneliness, but a space where unlikely connections can blossom at any moment. And it's curious how this invites us to reflect on ourselves. How many times have we been bystanders in situations where we could have done something and didn't? How many opportunities to offer help, even if small, have we missed because we thought it wouldn't make a difference? Perhaps what separates those who act from those who remain inactive isn't supernatural courage, but a sensitivity that recognizes the hidden truth. Every life has value, and every second can be decisive. These stories of strangers saving lives carry a universal lesson. It's not just about heroism, but proof that our simplest decisions can change someone's trajectory. For the young woman who was pulled from danger, that gesture represented a rebirth. For the stranger, it may have been just instinct, a momentary reaction. But by uniting these two perspectives, something much greater is born, a narrative of transformation, hope, and humanity. And perhaps this is the great revelation here. We don't need to wait for extreme situations to be that turning point in someone's life. The impact can happen on different scales. A smile offered at the right time, a word of encouragement, an outstretched shoulder when no one else seems available. All of these can be as decisive as pulling someone from imminent danger. What matters is the decision to act, to not close ourselves off in our own world, to recognize that each person's journey can be touched by ours, even in quick and unlikely intersections. This universal message is what transforms that young woman's story into something greater than her individual experience. It's a reminder to all of us that even in a world that sometimes feels cold and distant, there's still human warmth circulating, ready to manifest itself in the most unpredictable moments. And when that happens, when the improbable becomes real, we're reminded that we're not alone, and that life still holds surprises capable of rekindling our faith in others. Write down, "I'm on this journey too." If you believe that unexpected gestures can carry the power to change not just a day, but an entire life, never underestimate the power of an unexpected gesture. It can change or even save a life. This phrase may seem simple, but it carries within it a universe of meaning. How many times do we walk through life believing that nothing can be different, that fate is already sealed, and then suddenly someone appears who, with a single decision, completely transforms the course of a story? That's the beauty of unlikely encounters. They don't ask for permission, they don't follow logic, they don't obey rules. They just happen, and when they do, they leave lasting marks. The young woman who believed she was invisible discovered in a matter of seconds that her life had value, not because someone told her, but because someone proved it with their actions. The stranger who appeared in that moment not only removed her from physical danger, but also broke the weight of years of loneliness and disbelief. This is the kind of impact that cannot be measured solely by what we see. The true effect unfolds behind the scenes of the mind, in how she would see the world from then on, and this applies to all of us. The revelation that an unexpected gesture has the power to reconfigure mindsets, heal emotional wounds, and rekindle hopes that had been extinguished. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because thinking about it also leads us to reflect on our own role. What if we were the stranger in the story? What if, amidst the hustle and bustle of life, we became the person who decides to act, who chooses to care, who breaks the cycle of indifference? It's amazing to realize how small choices carry gigantic consequences. Sometimes, someone's life is one gesture away from completely changing direction. The decision to stop, to look, to help, can be the turning point in an entire journey. And that's precisely what makes this topic so urgent and so human. Because we're not just talking about a young woman saved by a stranger. We're talking about something that can happen anywhere, to anyone, including you. Stories like this remind us that life is made up of unplanned encounters, of crossing paths that bring powerful revelations. And these encounters, even the briefest ones, have the power to leave lasting marks. Therefore, it's important not only to listen, but also to allow yourself to participate in this wave of humanity. When you comment, share your experience and open up about what you felt after hearing a story like this, you not only validate someone's pain or triumph, but you inspire others who may be experiencing something similar. This is how we create bonds, even without knowing each other personally. This is how stories become bridges, connecting people who need to hear exactly what you have to say. Have you ever had an unexpected encounter that changed your life? Share it in the comments, because your story could inspire someone today. Believe me, the words you leave there could be the unexpected gesture someone needs to find hope again. And if this message resonated with you, don't forget to like it. This isn't just a click, it's a way of showing that this type of content matters and should continue to be told. When you like, you're helping spread real, moving and transformative stories so that more people have access to them. And subscribing to the channel is like taking a step further on this journey, choosing to be present to follow each new story that, like this one, can move you and even change the way you see the world. Never underestimate the power of an unexpected gesture. It can change or even save a life. This is the phrase that remains, not only as a closing, but as an invitation to reflect together on the value of every encounter, every decision, and every act of humanity that crosses our path. Comment below, "This makes sense to me," if this message touched you in any way and if you also believe in the transformative power of a simple gesture. If you've made it this far, it's because this story resonated with you in some way, and that already creates a special connection between us. So if you want to continue being part of this journey, subscribe to the channel. That way you won't miss the next stories that, like this one, can touch your heart and bring powerful reflections. Please also leave a like, as it shows that this type of content is truly valuable and deserves to continue reaching you. And just to let me know you stuck it out, comment below. I'm with you until the end. I'd love to see who was there for this journey from start to finish. And since you're here, don't stop now. There's a video right here that complements this topic. Click and continue with me there.